Welcome to Dead Pets, the podcast about pet grief that celebrates the lives of the creatures who have changed ours. To everyone who has been listening and sharing dead pets with your friends, thank you so much. We are growing, and it's really exciting for me to see this project that is so special to me is resonating with other people in the way that I hoped it would. We have a brand new website up at www.deadpetspodcast.com. It's looking really good. And there you can find our episode archives, more information about the podcast, and you can sign up for the upcoming Dead Pets newsletter, which is a place where I will be sharing thoughts and reflections and revelations from all the conversations I get to have with people about their beloved pets, about their lives, and about their deaths. I will also be sharing my own grief journey, mourning the loss of my 19-year-old cat, Dodge, who died a month ago. If you sign up for the Dead Pets newsletter, you'll get access to all of this. You will also get 30% off Dead Pets merch, which will be coming later this year. If you haven't already, don't forget to follow Dead Pets on TikTok. There you can find videos of some of the pets that we have featured. I'm working on other content like ways that you can memorialize your pet, information on the stages of grief, and reviews on books about pet grief. When it comes to saying goodbye to our pets, euthanasia can be brutal, destabilizing, peaceful, and cathartic all at the same time. I see euthanasia as a gift, a last act of love for the creatures who have trusted us with their lives and ultimately with their deaths. Anyone who has been through euthanizing a pet knows that the person giving that shot matters. On today's episode, I talked to Dr. Jack Murray, a vet that exclusively practices hospice care and in-home euthanasia. We talked about how he approaches his work to fully show up for families in these very difficult moments saying goodbye to their pets, what the experience is like for him, and what recommendations he has for people who are maybe considering putting their pets on hospice care. Everyone that I have talked to so far that works professionally in the space of pet death, they're all in it for their own reasons. Nobody is in the business of ushering pets from this life to the next for superficial reasons. I hope this interview answers questions that you might have and brings you a sense of peace if you have recently said goodbye to a pet or if that is something that is in your near future. Let's start from the beginning. Tell me about the pet that started your love of animals.
So I don't necessarily think it was one in particular. I grew up, of course, with a very pet-friendly household. We had lots of dogs and cats growing up. And then my mother was actually raised out on a ranch in Oklahoma. So we used to go visit there pretty frequently and spend a lot of time in the summers and things like that. So that really kind of got me year after year really invested in and kind of started my love for animals.
Tell me about this ranch. I'm assuming there was horses, cattle, agriculture animals. Is that the correct term?
Yes, correct. Yep. Mainly cattle, and then they did have some horses as well.
How did that experience turn into a career in vet medicine? A lot of people grow up in pet-friendly households or they love animals and they never become vets. And a vet is like in those categories of careers that somehow kids are aware of and becomes the thing that they say when people ask them, what do you want to be when you grow up? But you actually did it. So tell me about that.
Yeah. So just being out, out on the land, out with nature and with the animals, there's just a very, surreal feeling about that, which is, I don't know, kind of sparked something inside of me, as well as I, love the sciences and kind of love the medicine part of it as well. So it was something like many vets, just something ingrained in us since we were little. That just I was going to be a vet and that's what I was going to do. And that was truly, the only career option in my mind. It still only is, up until this point. So it's just something that was ingrained in me from a little kid that was just always interested in it and just kind of kept, progressing with the steps.
Where did you go to school?
So I did undergrad at Kansas State University, and then I did veterinary school at the University of Missouri.
How does one choose a specialty like in-home euthanasia and hospice? Is that something you knew right away that you wanted to do, or was it over years into your career that you were like, I think this is the thing I need to focus on. I think this is what I'm meant to be doing.
Yeah, so I graduated back in 2024, so a couple years ago, and we were living in Iowa at the time. Definitely, we didn't get a lot of training about, euthanasia, most certainly not in-home euthanasia, hospice, anything like that in school. So I really didn't know, it was even an option per se. And I was working at a general practice clinic outside of Des Moines. And we were getting calls all the time asking if anybody was available to come out, to these people's homes to help, their pet at the end of life. And unfortunately, that area, there wasn't a whole lot of options. So I started doing it a little bit, maybe once a week, once every other week, and just kind of sparked, sounds weird, but like a passion in this. If you've ever done it or if anybody's ever gone through it, it is just such a different experience compared to taking your dog to the vet clinic. It's so much more peaceful. They're not getting worked up. There's no placement of IV catheters, nothing like that. It's like the medicine part is completely removed. So I kind of fell in, I don't want to say in love with it because that sounds a little crazy, but I found that it's, my calling or my passion after I started doing it, a little bit back in Des Moines. And then we most recently moved over here to the Chicagoland area, and I started doing it full time since we moved over here.
How many calls do you take a week?
It can vary on the week. I do stay fairly busy, and I do honestly work 7 days a week, usually about 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. So I do work a lot. I would say anywhere from about 20 to 30 a week.
Tell me about your first euthanasia.
So I was actually working in a clinic, the same clinic in Des Moines, Iowa, and truly, nothing, prepares you for it. We, like I said, don't get much training in school, and, got to go in on a couple of euthanasias and things like that, but not one, you're truly the primary provider on this. So definitely something that will always be ingrained in me. And I feel like I was underprepared at that time, but I just tried to be, the best version of a doctor I could be for the owner and the pet at that time.
When you say you were underprepared, do you mean like emotionally underprepared?
Yes, and conversationally as well. I think a big part of our job as doctors, and especially as hospice and end-of-life doctors, is not necessarily all the training we get in medicine and the medications and things like that, but it's more, how do we have these tough conversations? What are, not want to say the correct things to say, but how do we convey our message in a meaningful and an emotional way? Because a lot of it is being an emotional connection for the owner and the pet during this time.
Do you think there needs to be more training in veterinary school around euthanasia?
Most definitely, yes. It is such a, I would say, underserved or undertaught topic, just because it's not, I don't want to say not medicine, because it still is medicine, but it's not something that, is on the forefronts of the teaching and training, unfortunately. But I think, client communication is an area that is so lacking in our profession. Something I place a really large emphasis on is if there is younger children present, anywhere from the ages, of 5 up to, 15, 20, those are still moments. I mean, we all have them from our own childhood, that we don't forget. So I always, try to place, always remind myself of, this is such an important milestone in their life, because it is something, unfortunately, they're going to remember forever.
I really appreciate you saying that. I said goodbye to my 20-year-old cat a few months ago, and he was euthanized, and I wanted it so badly to be at home. And I went to our last vet appointment anticipating that they were going to, give me bad news, and then I'd still have like a day to schedule it or be able to do it that afternoon, like at home. But we ended up doing it at the office, which was not what I wanted. They've been his vet for so long, and he liked it there. And the way the tech and the vet were really present with me helped me feel so much peace about it, even though it wasn't what I wanted and what I had envisioned for so long. I had him for 20 years. I thought about that goodbye for years, but they made it something that I was able to accept, and it made me realize how important that person's present is. But until you go through it, I mean, I interview people about their pets who have passed away, and I've talked to a lot of people about the moment that they euthanize their pets. And the people that are present, the professionals that are present, are so important in making it something that can really affect your grief journey. It can really affect like how you start processing that loss. So tell me about the ways that you are present for people, or the things that you do to make this really, as you said, a milestone. It's a life-changing event for people. How do you be present in a way that makes it less awful for them, I suppose? I guess that's the best way I can think of how to put it.
I always just try to remain calm and then, confident in my abilities to walk into their home and have, sort of conversation, learn more about their pet beforehand, their favorite things to do. I mean, like you said, we're compiling, almost 15 to 20 years of memories in a single appointment. And it's truly, my first time most of the time, meeting these families and these pets. So trying to, they're welcoming a stranger into their home. It's extremely intimate. They're offering a lot of times, coffee and food and things like that, just because I don't want to say having a guest over, but it essentially is, I'm walking and they're inviting me into their home. A lot of times, on their couch or in their bed or wherever their pet is, in their backyard, wherever their pet is most comfortable. So it's definitely a kind of a more close-knit experience. And a lot of time we sit there talking and they're showing me pictures and everything of their pet's favorite memories. And it truly is, I don't want to say distracts their mind from what's going to happen, but it helps relive, their favorite memories and their favorite moments with their pet, showing me pictures. Oh, we took them at the beach in Hawaii, or we went hiking in the mountains in Colorado. Like, those are truly the moments that your pet and you are going to remember for the rest of their lives, and help makes, putting them at peace and letting them rest, a little bit easier, I found.
A lot of people I interview for the podcast, the majority of guests have said goodbye to a pet through euthanasia. A handful of the deaths have been unexpected and accidental. But as someone who's experienced euthanasia, it's like this gift. There's just this, this sense of peace with it. But I say that as someone who said goodbye to my cat who lived for almost 20 years. Like, he could not have lived a second longer. He got the longest, most wonderful life. So I say that from the experience of someone who has never had to say goodbye to a young pet via euthanasia. But regardless, I'm just so glad it's something that is an option and is available to us. Once I realized that this was my last act of love to my cat that I had loved so hard for so long, it really helped me mentally start to process it.
Most definitely. And I think a lot of, times we're comparing it to people or other, and, loved ones that we've gone through this process with. And, unfortunately in veterinary medicine, we don't have, the same medications available to help keep our pets comfortable during end of life. Unfortunately it can be, as the body is starting to shut down, it can be a painful process. So like you said, it truly can be, a gift to help prevent any more pain or suffering.
So I want to talk to you about how you have conversations with people around this. I'm sure there's a lot of people that are wondering, is this the right time? Am I doing the right thing? I mean, I think that's also a part of the process of accepting your pet's euthanasia and scheduling it. So many people I talk to have this period of time where they're just like, I don't know, is this right? How many days do we have left? And as someone who experienced it recently, I mean, like I said, my cat could not have lived a second longer. He had a wonderful life, and we had his vet appointment scheduled a few days beforehand, and I was starting to accept, okay, his body's shutting down. This is what's going to be happening. And then at the 11th hour, I was just petting him and cuddling with him, and I saw that he had a really long nail, which was very unusual for him because he was always really well groomed, and he loved his cat scratching posts and everything. And I spent probably 12 hours. In my mind, I was like, oh, it's just this long nail. It's just uncomfortable. We're good. He's just not feeling well because of this nail. They're going to take him in tomorrow. They're going to trim that nail, and they're going to be like, hey, he's healthy as a horse. And now I'm looking back on it, and I was so convinced that we had more time, that it wasn't the right time. It wasn't going to be happening yet. And then I realized on my own, and my vet assured me, yes, this is the right moment. It's time. He's ready. How do you have those conversations with people? The is it time conversation?
Yes. End of life. I always say it's so dynamic. It can always be changing. And it's not something, unfortunately, that can always be planned on our timeline. We always, of course, there's, maybe loved ones from out of state that are wanting to come visit, or if it's, around the holidays or another event, we're trying to, line everything up perfectly. And unfortunately, our animals, our dogs, our cats, they don't follow, our timeline usually. So that can be definitely something that is very hard to, for owners to help understand, we're wanting, there are kids that this dog helped raise, for the last 12 years to say goodbye. And unfortunately, they, a lot of times, will schedule out and, we're in communication. And then, a day or two later, like, oh my gosh, my pet is really, really declining fast. He's struggling to breathe and other things. And we have to move up the appointment and things like that. So it's always, I don't want to say the $1 million question, but I was always the quality of life. It's always changing. And the thought, behind in the back of our head is, what if we can get good, more good days? And that always is something that is rational, because of course we want as much good time with our pet. Kind of on the flip side, it can be, if they start having, more bad days than good, there's always, I always say it's like, going up the ridge of a mountain. Can have good days and bad days and be fluctuating, and then unfortunately, if the bad days start stacking up, and then they can start declining pretty quickly. Other disease processes and other things, they can be very great and running around playing ball up into a certain point, and then it's almost like a flip of a switch and they decline extremely fast. And we as owners and even as veterinarians never know when that moment's going to be. So it can be something that if we are wanting to plan for, sometimes I always say it is okay to let them go on a good day to prevent, this, the flip of a switch and letting them, extremely decline so fast and having to rush them to an emergency room and things like that. So I would say it's very individualized for each pet and then each family as well, based on their needs.
Tell me about situations like where there's kids in the home that have never experienced it before, or where there might be other pets in the home, or where there's someone who has like zero experience with this and they really need to be guided. How do you work with those individual situations?
I always say, I don't have any kids currently at the moment, but I always say it's always up to the family on what they see as best for, having children or other pets during this process. I would say, there's some research out there, kids about, the age of 6, 7, 8, it's very hard for them to comprehend, the process of death. So it can be difficult for them to understand. A lot of times if there is younger kids, present, they're running around, they're, pulling the other animal's tail, like, they're not fully present in the moment, which understandably they can't, they are so young. It's hard for them it's hard for us as adults to process what's going on, let alone, a 3, 4 or 5-year-old, child. So sometimes it, can be good. It can kind of distract and provide some, humor or relief, during this time. For older children, I try to just use, very calm and blank terms with it, saying, unfortunately, your pet is going to pass away and go to heaven today. Using very direct terms like death and dying can be helpful, rather than, put to sleep and other kind of word around, just to help them comprehend a little bit better. And then for other pets in the house, I always, leave it up to the owner as well. If they're going to be, the owner thinks they're going to be more of a distraction or take away from the moment, it's definitely something, it's okay to have them, put away or in the backyard or at a different location. And then always, if the owner, would like, they can come and spend time with the deceased pet afterward as well. Other times the other pets are, can remain in the same area or in the house. And what we do see, I'm seeing more often than not, is the other pets, they're kind of distancing themselves as this process is going on, as well as is kind of what we see.
Do you think they have some awareness of what's happening?
Some dogs more than others. Of course, there's always, the 3-year-old golden retriever that is just wagging his tail and so happy that a stranger is in his house. Though, those, I'm like, do you know what's going on? He's just like, and I'm like there, and he's just wagging his tail and literally so happy. I think it's more dog and animal dependent. But I do think, a lot of times animals communicate in their own ways beforehand. They know the other one is not feeling well. They know the other one is sick. A lot of times, even before us owners know. So I think there's that level of communication between the animals, and owners do say, hey, my cat who has been living with this dog for the past 15 years has never once cuddled with. And in the past month, they have been inseparable, sleeping in the bed every single night and things like that. So, certain instances like that, I know that there's communication and an understanding, between the animals in the house.
Something that really helped me during, my cat's name was Dodge, during Dodge's euthanasia. And as I mentioned before, I was convinced for like a day that it was just this nail. And I know that he had such a long, wonderful life, and we had so much time together, and we took such good care of each other. But I remembered all the moments where I fell short, where I was like the moment I accidentally locked him in the basement for a day, which was 15 years ago, and all the moments where I should have bought him better food, and I couldn't always afford his special kidney food when he was younger, and so he didn't get it consistently. And obviously he lived for 20 years, so it's not like that had this huge detrimental effect on his health. And the vet kept telling me, you did a good job. You did an amazing job. And that really helped me a lot. And I just wanted to share that. It's just a simple thing to say to someone, but it really helped me be present in that moment with him instead of like going through all the things I wish I would have or could have or should have done. We talked a lot about the experience that you try to bring to other people, but what about for you?
It's hard to put into words, but it's truly kind of opening, going into their home for the first time. I have no idea, who these people are, what the family dynamic is going to be, what the, state of the pet is going to be. So I don't want to say opening like Pandora's box, but sometimes it can truly be like, very eye-opening. And I never know, what other people are going through or dealing with as well. I, was recently with an owner who was having to put their pet to sleep. And one of the family members just went through open heart surgery 2 days ago and just got home this morning. And it's just, a lot of these crazy circumstances that's truly, I have no idea what I'm about to walk into once I go into these appointments. So it's definitely something that, the process is, always the same, but it's every single person has a story, and every single person is so individualized with their pet that is the part that keeps me going, is understanding what these people are going through and what their story is truly incredible.
What you do is like, it's a sacred thing, just to use spiritual language, I suppose. It's kind of a holy act. That's a lot of responsibility, but it also seems like something that I can just tell by the way you're talking that it's truly a calling for you. And it seems like something that no one who does this, it's not a calling. It's a calling for everyone who decides that this is what they want to do.
Yeah, most definitely.
So do you have your own pets?
I do. I have a Australian cattle dog, and then I have a horse as well.
Oh, wonderful. Does your experience with the end of life care for pets with in-home hospice and euthanasia, does that influence the way your relationship with your pets and maybe like how present you are with them?
That is, yes, definitely something that has been changing over the last couple years. I get home from a long day or, back from a trip or whatever, and I'm, tired or just want to go lay down and go to bed. But it's, especially my dog, she's been waiting for this moment for me to come home all day. She absolutely loves it. So it's definitely something I try to be, more present in. I'm on my phone 24/7 literally. So if I'm taking her on a walk or, playing with her in the backyard, I just try to set my phone down and leave it alone, because they know, when you're on your phone, they know when you're not giving them your whole undivided attention. So it's definitely something I try to be present every single day. And then, giving her, if I am away or busy on appointments, we have a great neighborhood community that there's a lot of kids and they love to come out and play with Heidi. She plays ball constantly. So it's like yesterday, the neighbor had her over at her house for like 3 hours while I was gone, and she was just having the best time. So it's definitely something I try to line up all those things as well, just to keep her day full too.
So we've talked about euthanasia. We haven't really talked about hospice very much. For people who don't know or who have never heard of it, what is hospice care for pets?
Yes, kind of in pretty blank terms, it's keeping your pet comfortable and happy for as long as possible. So typically, that is done with medications, and other could be holistic therapies. Acupuncture is becoming very more popular as well. So it's definitely something, just pretty direct, just keeping your pet happy and as comfortable for as long as possible.
When do you recommend people put their pets on hospice? When is the right time for them to make that decision?
It can be a different decision for every family. I think, going into your vet's office, when you're getting a diagnosis or your you're being told your pet has this condition or this disease, there's always, a spectrum of options that we can do, all the way, let's, go see a specialist, let's consider an MRI, let's do surgery, and that answer is different, and decision is different for every single pet owner. All of us have, kind of I don't want to say a threshold, but certain options that we will pursue for our pet. For me, do I think I would want to put my, 16-year-old dog through a long surgery and a ICU stay? I don't know, but it's different for every single pet, and every single situation is different. If my dog was, 4 or 5, putting him through the same thing, it's definitely a bigger decision. And unfortunately, financials do play a part in this as well. There is a large financial component to, more advanced care, MRIs, CT scans, surgeries, specialist visits, chemotherapy, radiation. A lot of these are, repeat vet visits that, sometimes can be lifelong. And that plays a part in as well. And then kind of getting to the middle of the spectrum is, considering hospice or palliative care, saying, hey, I'm not wanting to pursue, advanced options, which is okay. I always say just because we can doesn't mean we should. Just because we can offer XYZ, just because we can do, all these advanced things doesn't mean, it's right for you and your family. So then that's when we can talk about, more pain management, more, can be at-home visits and things like that to try to keep them, lifestyle changes and modifications as well.
What a wonderful option for people. I love that.
It is. Yeah, it's definitely an area that's kind of up and coming in our profession, and mobile practice is growing kind of as a whole, just because pet owners it's such a better experience and low stress for your pets to be in their own home. And especially on hospice care, a end of life or hospice doctor can come into your home, see, hey, my pet is having difficulty getting down the 2 steps to get to the backyard, or they're having, slipping on certain flooring in the house. We can really see, the lifestyle and the modifications we can try and make. And I'm friends with a lot of hospice or senior dog veterinarians that are going into people's homes and are setting up, different pain management protocols and doing acupuncture and certain things to help extend your dog's life and keep them happy and just comfortable for as long as possible.
That's something my husband and I have talked about with all of our pets. We have 2 dogs, a cat, and we just adopted a kitten from a litter that we fostered. But one thing that we've talked about is trying to have these conversations and make the decision before we get to that point where we have to. So we don't have to make these really tough decisions in those moments. Our dogs are young. They're both 6. Our cats are very healthy. But we've had conversations of if this and this and this happens, if when we get to this point, this is going to be our decision. And for us, it's kind of like our advanced directive for our pets. Is that something you recommend people doing?
Most definitely. And that's honestly part of the reason I started the social media page as well. It's just because it's so important to think about these things and have these conversations beforehand. I've worked in emergency medicine as well. And it's, you're literally going into these rooms giving people the worst news of their entire life. Saying, hey, your pet is sick, or your pet, needs this life-saving $8,000 surgery, things like that it's, changing the trajectory of these people's lives. So it's definitely something, if you're able to think about, these things beforehand and say, hey, if my pet, and it's not always black and white, but if, knowing, hey, my dog, hates going to the vet, he hates the car rides, maybe I, would not consider radiation where my pet has to be put under general anesthesia every, there's certain protocols, but every week for the next 12 weeks, per se. Maybe that's not an option for me, which is okay to say. I think there's a lot of guilt as well, around, hey, I'm not pursuing every single treatment option under the sun for my pet. Is that, I feel bad as a pet owner, I feel guilty, which most certainly it is not. It is definitely something that you truly are doing the best within your means for you and your pet and your lifestyle as well.
Pet insurance is a thing. My husband and I have it for our pets. We've never had to use it. Is that something you recommend for people, given the financial burden that, a lot of people face when making these decisions about, their pet being in an emergency and whether to move forward with treatment or not?
I would say at this current moment with pet insurance, it is fantastic. They do provide a lot of assistance, especially in, emergency situations, and just helps make that decision a lot easier. It's a very emotional time when these owners are coming in, during these these crises that their pets are having. So I think that most certainly it helps a lot of situations.
Tell me what you love the most about what you do.
I would say it's meeting these individuals and families every single day. Like I said earlier, every single person has a story. And even though, I'm meeting these people for the first time, it truly, by the end of the appointment, it's like we've known each other for a long time and we've been friends for a while. And it's truly something, it sounds weird, but I've made friends from doing this job as well. It's, people have stayed in touch. We've gone out for drinks or a coffee or, stayed in connection with, these people for months afterwards, that's truly the most special part in my opinion.
What a special way to connect with people.
Which, yeah, it sounds crazy. I'm the person coming to, unfortunately help their dog, and end their dog's life, but it's, a weird way to make a friend per se, but it's I don't know. There's some sort of connection. It's not a, professional at all, me going into their home. And it's just it's a hard way to describe it. It's just a different experience compared to, the traditional veterinarian client relationship in the clinic.
My last question for everybody is usually about their individual pet, but I'm going to ask you this, framing it around all the animals you've helped cross over. If there is a rainbow bridge, there is another side, an afterlife where we get to be reunited with the pets and the animals that we have loved, and all of the pets that you have helped get over that rainbow bridge are waiting for you. What is the first thing you will say to them?
Oh, that is such a loaded question. I think the first thing is just going to say, how much their owners love them. And of course they already know that, but, just the unconditional love and care and thought that their owners had with them every single day. And that they still have even after they passed for them.
If you want to hear more from Dr. Murray, you can find him on TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram at Dr. Murray Hospice Vet. Thanks for listening. Dead Pets is a Wild Media Industries production. It is written, hosted, and edited by me, Elyse Wild. If you have a dead pet that you would like to share, please reach out at deadpetsofficial@gmail.com. Follow Dead Pets on TikTok and Instagram, and sign up for the Dead Pets newsletter at www.deadpetspodcast.com. And remember, until one has loved an animal, part of one's soul remains unawakened. Anatole France.